Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk about probably the single most important factor in success with delivery apps like Uber Eats and DoorDash, GrubHub, things like that. Really probably any gig apps, at least the ones that I've had experience with. And that's what's known as cherry picking. Cherry picking is basically just an industry term for being selective about the orders that you decide to take and the customers you decide to help. Now, there are some different opinions on cherry picking. There are some delivery drivers who think, you should just take every order that comes to you. And in the end, it works out as long as you're staying busy, you're making money, and you'll be successful. So I've been doing delivery for Side Cash off and on for over 5 years for a few different apps, Favor, DoorDash, Uber Eats. And in my experience, there is no quicker way to be dissatisfied, not make as much money as you want, put unnecessary wear and tear on your car, pay for more oil changes, burn through more gas, and basically just make yourself miserable than taking every single order that is offered to you. Financially, it just doesn't work out in your interest at all. And it inevitably leads to frustration as you put a lot of time and effort and energy and drive long distances to take these orders to customers in hopes that they'll leave you a cash tip, and they almost never do, almost inevitably. So that's why it's very important to be super selective about which orders you decide to take so that you make sure you're actually making money, you're meeting your financial goals, you're not just out there wasting time, money, gas for nothing. If you have done delivery for gig apps for any substantial amount of time and you have any level of experience, you probably have already realized that the vast majority of the orders that are offered to you have no tip or low tips. Being selective is going to help you make sure that you make more money and that you're more satisfied with the results of your workday, and ultimately that you're getting out of delivery what you want. So now that we know why cherry picking is important, I want to talk about some of the most important rules to keep in mind for cherry picking. The first one, I'm sure you've heard before. It's kind of a hashtag. There's a bunch of articles and videos about it already. It's called no tip, no trip. And it's exactly what it sounds like. If when that order comes across, it is not immediately clear from the total that's displayed that there is at least some type of substantial tip included in the total payout, decline it. Delivery is a luxury service. It takes time, it takes effort, it puts wear and tear on your vehicle. It has the opportunity cost of taking you away from other deliveries that potentially could have tips on them. So in no way does it work out in your favor to accept orders that don't obviously have a tip. So have some self-respect. Don't do yourself the disservice of wasting your own time and energy. And don't do all your fellow delivery drivers the disservice of lowering the acceptable price of your labor. So no tip, no trip. Only accept orders that clearly have at least some kind of a reasonable tip on them. All right, so the particulars of this next rule are definitely a little fuzzier, and they're going to vary depending on some factors like the market that you're in, the time and day of the week that you work. But generally, it is figure out what hourly rate is acceptable to you, like what you generally expect to average out to over the course of a shift, and decline any orders that don't calculate out to at least that much. For example, I drive into the busiest part of the Dallas market to work, and my minimum hourly rate that I generally use to calculate whether or not I'm going to accept an order is $20 to $25 an hour. And as I said, that varies some depending on the day of the week and the shift. The minimum that I'll accept on a Saturday night dinner rush is going to be quite a bit higher than the minimum that I will accept on a Tuesday lunch rush. Sometimes a day are busier, some days of the week are busier. The expected order size can vary a lot, and of course the tip is largely dependent upon that expected order size. In sort of a large to mid-sized market like Dallas, I would say $20 an hour is probably a good minimum. If you're making less than that, I would consider driving into a busier area of your city to work. Now, keep in mind that $20 to $25 an hour range that I mentioned, that is a target minimum. Obviously, we want to try to maximize our time and our earnings and make as much as we possibly can. But when you're trying to calculate, should I take this order? Should I not? Like if it's not a clear accept, then use that $20 an hour as kind of a general minimum rule. If it doesn't calculate out to at least that for the time and effort required, I would probably turn it down. All right, so our next rule for cherry picking is to always start your shift by driving to the area near you with the highest concentration of high-priced restaurants. and park as close to one as physically possible. I know there's a lot of mystery out there surrounding sort of how these companies' algorithms work. What I will say is that in my 5 years of personal experience doing delivery for these apps, proximity seems to be the number one factor in the quality of the orders that I get. For example, there's a particular neighborhood in Dallas that I always drive to, and I always park outside of one of the same handful of restaurants, because I've found that if I'm parked right next to those restaurants, I have a much higher likelihood of getting, say a short distance order for, $12 or $15. Whereas if I'm even a half mile away from those restaurants, that's when I start getting the long distance orders for $3.50, $4.75. So proximity, in my experience, seems to be incredibly important. Get as close as you can to a high concentration of high dollar restaurants. Okay, so that last rule regarding proximity very much informs the next one, which is to pay super close attention to where your deliveries are going. You want to make sure that the destination either A, is very close by and not a long distance, so that you can easily circle back and get back to the same busy high dollar area where you're working, or B, make sure that it's going to drop you off close to another concentration of high value restaurants. It's definitely okay to ping pong back and forth between different clusters of restaurants, so long as they match the criteria that you're looking for. A clear example of an order that this rule would disqualify from you wanting to accept is one that may have a decent tip on it, relatively high payout, but is a very long distance going out to maybe a suburban area where there is not a cluster of high dollar restaurants nearby, or otherwise it's just taking you far outside of your desired work area. While we're on the subject specifically of restaurants, another super important rule for cherry picking is to learn the restaurants in your market. Not all high menu price restaurants are created the same. Some always have the order ready when you arrive. Some keep you waiting there with very long waits. Some have a dedicated to-go person who's there for you to check in with and is ready to hand you that order as soon as it's ready. With others, you have to compete with 20 patrons at a bar for the attention of a bartender to give you 2 seconds of their time, which they're not going to want to do because you're not tipping them anything, whereas all these other patrons are. This one, you kind of just have to learn through experience. You have to tough your way through some poor experiences with restaurants, hopefully get some good ones, and learn which restaurants are really friendly and super helpful and fast. There are a lot of restaurants out there that are happy to see me and smiling when I come in. It's not all bad, but you are definitely going to want to learn which places that you want to avoid, or at least only take if it's a slow day and you're taking it on a whim. That $13 tip on an order becomes a lot less exciting when you have to wait for 25 minutes at the restaurant for the order to be complete. One more rule that sort of goes hand in hand with learning your restaurants is to basically just avoid fast food orders in general. For the most part, like your McDonald's, your Wendy's, your Arby's, your, all that kind of stuff, just avoid it. The order totals are low, and most people base their tips on the order total. So they'll think, I'm not going to tip somebody $8 for some Taco Bell, when in reality, it took the same amount of effort to bring you that Taco Bell that it would have taken you to bring some sushi. So because the time and distance and effort is the same, but the payouts are much lower, it's just generally not worth it to deal with fast food. Plus you're also dealing with drinks a lot, and those could spill in your car. In my experience, fast food's just not worth it. So unless it's a super slow day, or unless the payout is just undeniably great and the distance is low, I would try to stick to full service restaurants or fast casual. And as far as I'm concerned, the final and potentially most important rule to remember for cherry picking is that almost every rule has exceptions. The only rule that I would say doesn't have an exception is no tip, no trip. Don't take an order without a tip. Other than that, let's say it's a crazy busy Sunday night with lots of surge. At that point, I would up my minimum. Let's say you live in a market that only has fast food restaurants. Maybe you live in a really small town. Obviously, you're gonna adjust your strategy and you're gonna figure out how to make fast food work for you. And if you're working on like a quest bonus type of thing where, let's say you do, 50 deliveries in a week and they're gonna give you an extra $200, then a lot of these rules go out the window, because at that point, the most important thing you can do is make sure you complete that quest. So you have to kind of just learn from experience when to sort of bend a rule where it makes the most sense. That said, the most important guiding principle that's going to tell you, when to bend these rules, or, which to lean harder into and which to maybe relax a little bit, is that at the end of the day, what's going to make you the most money for the least effort. You're essentially operating a small business. You're an independent contractor. Your time is your money. The wear and tear on your car, your expenditures, all that is coming out of your pocket. So if there's something that makes more sense than what I've talked about, it's going to make you more money in a smaller amount of time, absolutely do that instead. All right, guys, those are rules for cherry picking. I hope you've gotten something out of this, and I hope these tips help you to maximize your time and earn a little bit more on the road. If you have some specific rules for cherry picking that I haven't mentioned here, go ahead and throw them down in the comments for me or for other people to learn from. We all make more money when we help each other. And if you enjoyed this video enough to want to see more like it, I highly encourage you to click subscribe, because I'm going to be posting more Uber Eats and DoorDash related content, all geared toward helping you make more money on your shifts every day. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you guys have a great night.